Well, good morning and welcome to the 2025 Disability in Wellness at Work event. Thank you first to our sponsors, Novant Health, Atrium Health, and MetLife for sponsoring today's event. My name is Beth Butler Fatal, Executive Director of Disability in North Carolina. Today, we'll be covering sensitive topics such as trauma, mental health, and recovery. Our conversation today will focus on the psychological impacts of trauma on the mind and body, and may even focus on details of specific traumatic events. So, this content may bring up difficult emotions and activation for some of us. If you find yourself feeling activated during today's session, we want to invite you to do what you need to do to take care of yourself, whether that's turning off your camera, stepping away from the computer for a break, or leaving the virtual meeting room altogether if this content is not feeling good for you today. During the session, we will strive to create a mindful and a respectful environment for all of our participants. So we ask that you please refrain from disclosing any details of your own or someone else's trauma history, both in the chat or in verbal conversation, as we will have some time for Q&A at the end of today's session. So thank you in advance for your help for taking care and prioritizing your well-being during today's session. I also want to direct you to the accommodation features located in the Zoom platform today. So if you need closed captioning, for example, please engage that there on the Zoom platform. We also direct you to use that chat and or Q&A box for the questions that we'll take during the Q&A session of today's event. So through today's event, we also invite you to listen and learn from the lived experiences of our presenters. We will share additional information on Kelli Bowen's book and Kevin Rumley's album in the chat during today's event. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Brian Kirsten, Senior Medical Director of the Emerging Care Division and Virtual Services Group for Advocate Health, to say a few words.
Thank you, and good morning. My name is Brian Kirsten. I'm a primary care physician and have been in Charlotte for the past 25 years. I am so grateful for the opportunity to share some of the outstanding work by our virtual primary care team in a short video. Most virtual care models function as a virtual urgent care. I think many may be familiar with that type of model. And while that model is so important, the virtual primary care clinic seeks to build the same type of long-term relationship we all look for when we establish with a traditional clinic. Our virtual primary care clinic is staffed with fully remote MDs and APPs. We are able to manage a wide range of medical conditions from the comfort of your home. Since the inception of our program, we have managed thousands of patients, and 3 of our top 5 chronic conditions that we see most often are behavioral health conditions. By providing that convenient access from your home, we remove many of the challenges to accessing healthcare. I would like to share a video that highlights the convenience and ease of receiving your care through a virtual-only platform. Thank you.
You see each other face to face. For me, because I work Monday through Friday, it's really difficult sometimes to get the time off. But if I can do it from my office and get the same results as coming into the clinic, then that's a win-win.
It's very convenient. It's right done in the office, and it's convenient for me in that I get to follow up and the patient doesn't have to keep on rescheduling. A stable patient like Lillian, who I just want to check in. I just want to see how she's doing. She's going to tell me her sugars. I can absolutely do that over the phone. they really like it. Some, I give them the option and they want to come in. Some feel that they are held accountable if they come in, but others, they're like, oh, thank God, because they don't have the same lunch time, or their bosses won't let them off, or whatever, that their teachers love it because they can just step out for 10, 15 minutes and do the visit. So there's a lot of benefits to it.
I prefer virtual, to be honest, because just if you're super busy, it makes it a lot easier. It's convenient.
Well, thank you so much. And boy, as an individual with low vision that doesn't drive, that virtual service is absolutely so well needed in our population and in our community. So thank you so much. I do also want to introduce Gabriella Francisco. She is a board member from Novant Health. Gabriella?
Thank you, Beth. Novant Health has partnered with Disability in North Carolina for several years now and is a very proud sponsor of the Wellness at Work program. Last year, Dr. Jonathan Fisher of our Wellbeing and Resiliency Office was our keynote speaker and delivered an amazing message of mindfulness during stressful situations and leaning into one's own breath when times get tough. At Novant Health, we believe providing remarkable care to our patients and communities begins with taking remarkable care of our team members. Our Wellbeing and Resiliency team continues to support our team members through the important message of well-being and self-care. So please enjoy this next video about our RX Thrive program, especially designed with physicians and advanced practice providers in mind to help bring a wellness to work via a focus on presence.
I remember when I was a young father, my kids were in middle school, and they'd come home and I'd ask the typical dad questions. How was your day? What'd you learn? And sometimes my daughter would start to give me the answer, and she would start to go into high detail of her day. And occasionally I would tune out. And I know this because she'd say, hey, Dad, are you listening to me? And then she'd say, would you like me to start over? And I'd say, no, honey, I'll catch up now. It was a very normal thing for me to be in my head. I also remember times where I spent a lot of planning, even money to go on vacation. My feet would be in the sand or in the ocean, and my head would be back at the office. And remember, those weren't billable hours, but I was lost in thought even while I was on vacation. Unhealthy stress and worry are products of our imagination, and we humans have very powerful imaginations. We can imagine a lot of things that might happen, scary projections of the future, even remember things of the past. In our quest for 10% more peace, more joy, less worry, less stress, we're going to examine what I think is one of our most powerful tools, controlling our mind. And what I mean by that is being able to control where our mind focuses. These thoughts of the future and these thoughts of the past can drive up stress and anxiety. Remember, unhealthy stress and worry are products of our imagination. If I think back at different chapters of my life, ones where I felt most stressed, most anxious, most worried, I can now see that I was really in my head, worrying about the future, ruminating about the past. One of the things that really helped me break the cycle was just realizing that I spent so much time in my head, that I wasn't present in the moment. If you want more peace, if you want more happiness, be present in the moment now. Spend less time in your head thinking about what might happen or what has happened. Being present in the moment, I believe, is a superpower. And if you want to get better at it, there's some simple steps you can start to take to start to grow this ability. It's not easy, but it's simple. Step one, just be more aware of when you leave now and you go up into your head. Notice it, don't judge it. Step two, notice where you go. Are you time traveling to the future? Are you ruminating about the past? And step three, this is where the superpower really kicks in, the ability to shift your attention, your focus on command when you say so. Come out of thinking and be fully present in the moment. If you want to get better at being present in the moments of your life, we have to practice it. So here's some things you can do over the next week that's going to allow you to strengthen this muscle of being present on command. First thing I want you to do, set an intention for the next week that you're going to be more aware of where you are. Are you in your head? Are you in the moment? Just be aware of it. Don't judge it, just be aware of it. At the end of every day, I want you to rate yourself 1 to 10. How aware was I of where my thoughts were, where my focus was? Number 2, I'd invite you to have a conversation with someone in your life. Maybe it's a significant other, a loved one, and you declare to them, for the next week, I'm going to be fully focused on you when we have a conversation. You're going to have my full, undivided attention. And you go practice that. And at the end of the week, you have a conversation and you say, how'd I do? Rate me on my scale of 1 to 10 of was I present with you? Third thing, at the end of the week, I want you to assess what was it like being more present in the moment? Were your experiences richer? Did you feel less stress, less worry? What did the people around you say it was like to be around you? Get some feedback of what it's been like for the others when you are more focused and present with them. Over the course of this season, we're going to circle back to this topic because I believe this is a superpower. We're hoping that you have less moments of surviving and more moments of thriving in your life and in your practice. We'll see you next time.
Great. I hope you enjoyed that video. Up next, I'm honored to welcome my friend and colleague, Elizabeth Lee, Senior Technology Project Manager and Chair of Novant Health's Veterans Business Resource Group. Elizabeth shares a connection to military service and has deep roots in North Carolina. As chair of the Novant Health Veterans BRG, which focuses on recognition of both internal veteran employees and patients, she passionately serves veterans out in her community. She served as adjunct for the Mecklenburg County Young Marines, where her son attended for 4 years. She also pays tribute to her family members who served in Vietnam and to her grandfather, who served as Sergeant Major in the Korean War. She has managed the deployment of significant technology initiatives while serving as Research and Development Manager at the City of Charlotte and Senior Project Manager at Novant Health. Elizabeth holds a double bachelor's from Queen's University, major in business and computer science, and is currently working on her MBA at Liberty University. She also holds her PMP from the Project Management Institute. When not thinking about working on technology of the future, she can be found pursuing her interests in working with youth at her church, in her garden, or spending time with family and friends. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Gabriella, for that introduction. Good morning, and thank you for attending a special event to hear from 2 outstanding veterans. I'm honored to introduce Kelli Bowen and Kevin Rumley. Kelli Bowen is a retired major of the United States Air Force, where she dedicated 2 decades in the Medical Service Corps. Her recent book, Weekend War on Two Fronts, delves into the emotional complexities of the combat zone and the profound challenges when returning home. When she's not lost in the world of words, Kelli enjoys savoring a good cup of coffee, enjoying the great outdoors on a hike, or teaching the next generation to explore their faith. Currently, she is working as a civil servant, working in policy, living in South Carolina with her husband, 3 kids, and 2 dogs that rarely follows her orders. We'll also hear from Kevin Rumley. Kevin is a combat wounded, 32 surgeries Marine Corps veteran, receiving a Purple Heart for injuries sustained in combat. Kevin is also a person in long-term recovery, remaining a vocal community advocate for harm reduction modalities, including medication-assisted therapy. Kevin serves as the program director for the Buncombe County Veterans Treatment Court, or the VTC, a treatment-based alternative to incarceration for justice-involved veterans. He completed his doctorate in social work from the University of Tennessee. In his free time, he enjoys playing music. He released his first ever solo album in April of 2024. We had the privilege of hearing his music in the introduction of this meeting. As you hear from Kelli and Kevin, please feel free to post any questions in the chat window and we'll address those during the Q&A session. So now I'd like to welcome Kelli Bowen and Kevin Rumley.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for the introduction. We're honored to be here to continue the conversation. Hey, Kelli, how you doing?
Hey, Kevin. Good. How about you?
Good, thank you. So let's just dive right in. How about tell us about your military career?
Okay. Well, my story's not too different from many others. I joined the military to pursue my military education, or my education, sorry. And I enlisted in the Air Force, and after completing my degree, I was commissioned as an officer. So I like to joke that the Air Force must have been pretty desperate because that's how I ended up with my commission. Um, what started as a very practical decision ended up turning into a 20-year career. So my official title was Medical Service Corps, an MSc, and the translation in civilian terms is a hospital administrator. So with just a little more camouflage and a fewer coffee breaks. Um, so in peacetime, my role involved overseeing healthcare operations, managing medical logistics, supporting clinical teams, and ensuring mission readiness. Um, that's the peacetime. But in combat, the dynamics shift. You're still managing routine healthcare needs like a service member with a broken leg, but you're also responding to some very traumatic battlefield injuries. And I think what was unexpected for me was the care that we did for women and children who got caught in the crossfire. Uh, Patient care still obviously remains the priority, but the context changes, right? I mean, as a hospital administrator in a combat zone, you're coordinating medevac, wanting to get the patients to the next level of care. You're making critical decisions under pressure, and you're operating within a new reality of whether patients are stable enough to to fly, right? To get to the next level of care. It just takes on a whole new meaning under the chaos of war. Um, so whether you're in peacetime or you're in a combat setting, my military experience really taught me how to lead during uncertainty, making tough decisions with limited resources. I think in healthcare and the military, we can all relate to that limited resources. And just be a steady presence for my team. And when things felt pretty unpredictable, so it was just really a privilege to serve alongside of these folks. I mean, our docs, our nurses, our respiratory therapists, our logistics folks. You can't do anything without logistics folks. I mean, they're miracle workers, right? They just do it all. So, yeah, so that sums it up, wraps it up.
Uh, yeah, thank you, Kelli. So I love that what was originally a way to get education, like a 4-year degree, turned
Yeah,
into 20 years of your life, your entire career right there. The first
right.
step. That's incredible. You kind of mentioned the different contexts, the peacetime context and this wartime context, and how that requires different skill sets. In combat, kind of these skills of hyper awareness and emotional control that you need in context of combat
Yeah.
in the process of healing, how are the opposites of those almost needed, like vulnerability and connection to your emotions? And so how do you kind of navigate what was needed in the service is the opposite of what you need as a civilian?
Right. Yeah. Love that question. I'm going to attempt to answer it. Nobody really tells you when you return home just the strength that you need. Um, you still need that strength that you have in a combat zone, but it just looks different. It looks there. It's just different tools. Um, Again, in both in the military and healthcare fields, you're trained to stay calm, right? Uh, Kind of suppress those emotions, make split second decisions. we rely on like protocols, checklists, right? You could just immediately go into solution mode. What's next? What's required? But when you return home, that survival reflex, it just doesn't serve you the same way. Like it's not useful. I think recovery really required me to like throw out the playbook. It was almost like everything I knew, I had to be like, all right, this isn't working. Um, so it does require vulnerability, right? And I want to be clear, vulnerability is not a weakness. I think it's absolutely necessary in the healing process.
Yeah, that idea too of vulnerability being a weakness, that's something as an 18-year-old, maybe joining the service. This is part of the ethos and ideas. Like, you got to be stoic, you got to be brave.
Yeah.
And anyways, a 20-year veteran, it means a lot hearing you say, no, vulnerability is like essential for healing.
Absolutely. The hardest part, right? Because you're trying to navigate that shift, and what does that look like? Um, it's hard to connect with your family and friends when you come back. I think that's normal. We don't talk about that. And so, um, at least it was never like a briefing I received.
Hey,
Right. So you're like, why isn't this not working?
you didn't have that protocol?
Yeah, that protocol was not in place. How to talk to your family when you come back. But if I was to like kind of encapsulate or try to come up with an example, uh, I don't know, of how to describe it. Um, I just remember getting my 2-week notification for my deployment to Afghanistan. And it's not a lot of time, right? And while I was packing my gear, I just had this vivid, almost surreal fantasy. Um, I imagined that my husband and my 3 kids were at Costco, and where they ran into this very kind, attractive woman, who would fall in love with him, and after kind of the appropriate amount of time, right, they would marry, and she would raise my kids as her own, and I know that sounds absolutely absurd and ridiculous, but it was important for me to it was almost like a coping mechanism to go, "You know what? They're gonna be okay without me." Like that's it. Someone is going to be there to fill in the gap so I can go do my job. So it allowed me to mentally prepare for the worst, so I could do my job. And hindsight's 2020, right? And the fantasy was kind of the beginning of my emotional withdrawal from my husband and my 3 kids. I didn't realize it at the time, but I had started to disconnect um, even before I left.
That's 2 weeks pre-deployment and you were saying this is almost a coping strategy, right? Thinking this through made you feel
Yes.
safe that they had that.
Right. Like they were gonna be okay. So that I needed to know that they were gonna be okay without me so that I could reframe, refocus, and n I guess not have any hesitation going into my job. Just being able to be like, "I'm present, I'm here, I can do this."
And the flip side, that is the beginning of this disconnect that happens.
Right.
I mean, yes, that encapsulates the essence of this dichotomy. That's it. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
That as you're sharing that, I was like, I don't know, that breaks my heart to think about, but it also makes total sense because yeah, it gives you that peace to focus on your mission.
Yeah,
And it's really, yeah, and a unique experience that veterans go through.
for
So
sure.
you are talking, this is pre-deployment, you're kind of doing these things, then you are deployed and you are in the combat zone, the combat experience, the battle mindset.
Yeah.
How did that experience change your relationships at home? Combat trauma.
So I physically came back, right? but emotionally, I was very distant. And I think you could have put me like in any family environment and it would have been the same, just a distance. Um, the connection with family and friends, I mean, I guess a graceful way to say it is it was fractured. Um, I think, I keep going back to stories, but the one story that I think captures this well is when I had recently come back from the deployment. It was probably like 3 to 4 months afterwards. And I was trying to start the lawnmower. And I was really frustrated because it just wouldn't cooperate. And my two oldest kids were outside with me, and they were happily drawing pictures with their chalk on the driveway. And just kind of like an utter frustration. And, I could feel the tears welling up. I was just like, why is this so hard? Like, I can't even mow the lawn. Right. And my 3-year-old ended up turning to his older sister and asking her, "Why is mommy so angry?" And her her response was simple and profound. I mean, she just said, "Well, mommy went to Afghanistan, and when she came back, she forgot how to do her chores. She has to learn how to do her chores again, and sometimes she gets angry." Here she is, 4 years old, and somehow she managed to articulate what I couldn't. Um, and I think it's important to know it wasn't just me that was struggling. I mean, clearly, my husband and kids were also struggling as we were trying to figure out, this life. Like, what now? How do we move forward? So yeah, it definitely impacted my relationships for
Uh,
sure.
so was it a conversation your husband's having with the kids, explaining mommy went there, and so this 4-year-old knows this is why mommy doesn't know how to do chores because she was.
Right. Right. I feel like something could have like that, had to have happened in the background, but she is
Yeah,
very, very astute young lady, and
right.
it was crazy, but yeah, we're figuring it out.
And that story does paint a perfect picture of that challenge. And you are deployed, and the world keeps happening for them, and they
Yes.
they keep moving forward, and they're this unit, and you are with literally your unit, and then you
Yeah.
return. I mean, what's that like? I can't. Yeah, that's got to be really difficult.
Um, yeah, it was hard. They had moved on. They knew how to work together. They had their routines in place. They knew when to sit down and eat for dinner. They knew story time. Like their new books, the new songs that they like, the new TV show. Um, just they had moved on, and I was just playing catch up, trying to like, where do I fit? Do I even fit back with my family? Do I belong somewhere else? I think I remember one time telling my husband, just like, I don't belong here. Like I belong back there. My life made sense. I had purpose. I had meaning. I don't have that. And so, yeah, you're just trying to kind of muddle through that.
That's Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, and I completely empathize. So as I'm listening, I think something that's unique about your story is you are an officer, and not everyone has served. I know what 1% of the population have served,
Yeah.
small percentage. So in the military, you have enlisted and you have officers. Um,
Mhm.
so officers are there's really this reverence towards officers, and have greater training, have gotten a bachelor's degree, gone through this, and then lead the enlisted troops. With that comes certain responsibilities. So I'm just thinking of your leadership position, and I'm wondering how that made it hard to show vulnerability and to the troops that
Mm.
you served with. How did you navigate that pressure both in the military and when you're back home? Maybe the stories we tell ourselves, right? I'm an officer, I have to be okay.
Right. Yeah. No, we all tell ourselves that we have to be okay. We have to lead by example. We can't really misstep, right? You've got to be perfect. And you got to show strength. Like, hey, we've got this, and you want people to follow your lead. Um, so you take on that responsibility, and it's definitely a serious one. because people are going to be following your orders and you're going, gosh, I hope I get this right. I was fortunate to be surrounded by what I consider battle tested leaders, um, who led with common confidence. And it's a skill set, but some even had compassion. And so I tried to model my leadership after them. So I feel extremely fortunate there. So you take that mindset for sure with you home, and that's a completely different ball of wax. But you want to present, and I think showing vulnerability is tough. I think there was maybe one moment, one time which I showed vulnerability while deployed, and that was because I had uh, made a mistake, and we were supposed to like pat down all the patients to ensure that they didn't have weapons on them, etc. Before they came into our official care. And we had an Afghani woman come in, and she had sustained injuries, and she did not have her lower extremities. And so my response to that situation as we were triaging, I was shaking my head saying, "No, we don't need to go ahead and go through the process," only to find out later, um, they called in a bomb threat at the hospital probably 15 minutes later, and we learned that she had had a bomb strapped to her. So, you know, that's not a great moment. And what we ended up finding out later was that it had detonated prior to her being on the aircraft, but we had no way of knowing all of that until all the thing came. Everybody did their jobs, and we figured it out. But that evening, with the unit during shift change, I had to go ahead and tell everybody what took place, what my role and responsibility was in that, and that I made a mistake, and just said, "Hey guys, in the future, as we move forward, um, you know, we still have to go through the protocols regardless of patient injury."
I mean, that is a day at the office for you.
Right, right.
Just fewer coffee breaks and EDs and suicide bombers. So yeah, everything you're sharing really is painting this picture of because even your job, right? It wasn't classic, say, infantry on the attack front lines, but the trauma experience is happening day in and day out.
Right, right.
Obviously, we're talking a lot about trauma during this
Yeah.
conversation and its implications, and then this idea of healing from it. And so I'm interested, what does
Mhm.
resilience and recovery mean to you?
You know, I want to say resilience, that definition has evolved over time for me. I think when I first heard that term, it was like a buzzword for a bit and everybody was using it. I just kind of had this idea. It was like this bootstrap, situation. It's like, okay, how resilient can I be? Like the dependency was upon, what I could muster and what I could do. Um, over time, like I said, it's evolved. And so now I realize that I, it's not just you. It's your environment. It's who are those trusted people in your life, right? Like, can I call Kevin up and saying, "Hey, I'm having a tough day mowing the lawn and it just really sucks." And knowing that Kevin's going to be on the other side and go, "Hey, you want me to come over and check out your lawnmower and see if I can help you fix it?" Like, just knowing that I have somebody in my corner and I know that Kevin's got me, I feel like that symbiotic relationship is a picture of resiliency. It's that willingness to ask for help, but it's that willingness and that availability of that trusted person in your life to be there for you.
I love that. I love I love that because I do, yeah, the word resilience often carries like, all right, let's pick yourself up by the bootstraps and just embrace, as they say, embrace the suck
Right.
in the Marine Corps and in the service. But I like that definition a lot. That makes
Thanks.
sense. And that connection with people you can reach out to.
Right.
So that was
Resiliency.
resilience and recovery or healing, what that means to you.
That definition has probably evolved for me over time because when I initially understood recovery, it was like, oh, it's this linear thing, like it's this progressive thing. Um, but what I found is recovery isn't about following a checklist. I think, with the VA and all the therapies, best practice therapies, right, that we're supposed to take, like, I went through them and I checked them off my list and I thought, oh, this is going to fix me. Because that was the messaging. And I was like failing through these, like, prolonged exposure therapy, CPT, all this stuff, EMDR, and like I was on my second track on all of them. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not fixed yet. So recovery's messy. It's not perfect, but it takes intention. I know I keep going to stories, but I think sometimes recovery um looks like sending a text to somebody, right? It's intentional. Maybe over time that text messaging becomes a phone call. Maybe you get really brave and you go have coffee. Although they seem like very, very small steps, they're actually big because they're full of intention. And in that specific situation, it's trying to build connection with people again. It's trying to build a relationship. And so I think that's part of, moments of the human connection and part of what healing looks like. And let's be real. Strength strength is knowing when to step back. Let someone else take the lead and trust that things will still move forward. Um, you know, even if you're not the one that's behind the lawnmower.
That's beautiful. And yeah, just I like that framing. I don't know, something about that just progression of I can send a text and this is that forward motion of recovery. I can then pick up the phone. I can then venture to say, let's meet for coffee. That makes a lot of sense to me that's healing. That's beautiful. Well,
Thanks.
thank you. I really appreciate you sharing all that.
Yeah. So do I get to ask you questions now?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to follow your
Okay.
very eloquent answer, so I apologize in advance.
No, not at all. So I have to admit, I have a soft spot for Marines. There's been some very special Marines in my life. So, and I happen to know you're one. So tell us about your military career.
Well, unlike you, I was enlisted and I enlisted because I had no options. I was graduating high school. I was already drinking heavily. I had lost my mother when I was young. She passed away unexpectedly. So for me, it was the only option. I couldn't go to college. I definitely was not getting in any officer tracks. So yeah, I remember I joined the Marine Corps. I'm 18 years old, and I thought this is going to fix all my problems. And it gave me so many gifts, just tremendous gifts. Because I was a rifleman. I was in the infantry. I ended up being sent to 29 Palms, California, and I was
Wow.
with a unit. There were about 100 of us that trained, and then in 2003 we deployed to Iraq. But
Wow.
unlike your 20 years, my career technically was 4 years, but about a year and a half in, I was on the Syrian border in Iraq and an IED detonated and it tore
Mm,
my body. And long story short, it changed my entire life. I ended up having to go to Walter Reed, where I was there for a year and a half. I had 32 surgeries. I was told I'll never walk again.
mm,
And um, in that process, I was completely removed from this community, the new tribe that I had built. And I'm in Washington, D.C., and they're still in combat. And it just felt like what was blossoming into these meaningful relationships and a greater sense of purpose that was ripped away. And then after that, I got to say, my life took a direction I was not prepared for, including addiction. Addiction that started in the hospital, Walter Reed, an Army hospital.
mm.
and I was getting mainline full of opioids. And then when I was discharged from the Marines, I'm only 21 and had been through such a traumatic experience and loss of esprit de corps and this everything that shaped who I was. I really struggled, and for about 7 years, I found myself I'd lost everything. I
Mm.
was addicted to opioids, addicted to heroin, drinking 40 beers a day, and honestly,
Yeah.
I didn't have the courage to just kill myself, but I wanted to die. Um, and it was a long road, kind of marching back to recovery. And it's interesting because this was only about a 4-month period in combat, but it has shaped the rest of my life.
Yeah, I'm just trying to take in everything that you just said. I can't even imagine um what that was like. I think the thing that stuck, I mean, besides the fact that, the 32 surgeries and an IED explosion, I mean, that's a lot in and of itself, right? But my heart just kind of jumped a little bit when you were talking about being, kind of discharged through the military and you had that community. Um, can you tell me what that was like a little bit and how you navigated that piece? I can't imagine because you're going from one place to where? What's your other community?
Right. Yeah. And that similarly with your story, right? And that the more that I talk to veterans, the more there is this experience of the difficulty transitioning out, right? There isn't this protocol, there isn't PowerPoint that's going to change our lives. And mine was, I'm fortunate and blessed to be alive, but now I'm physically scarred. My legs, I used to skateboard and all these things, and those are taken away. I can't run. I can't stand for longer than 30 minutes without having to take a break. And so that's everything I'm carrying. And then where
Right.
do I go? I have no community. And I work here in Asheville with veterans who are justice involved. And honestly, this idea of community to me is this healing force.
Mm,
Our program brings these veterans together, and we then create this community. And for 2 years, we walk this healing journey. And if they can complete our program, their charges are expunged. So it's a great um, treatment court model. But I share that only because in my own life and in these veterans' lives, we see over and over that if you have community, you can find a sense of purpose. Like that's how we
mm.
generate purpose. And the Marines gave that, and your service gave that. Um, and then it can be really challenging in the civilian world to find it.
So, I don't know, can you tell me, a little bit more about your educational path, like what you ended up doing? Because you kind of took this full circle, and I mean, it's led into the work that you do today.
Yeah, yeah. I was really fortunate to find recovery. A big part of this recovery journey for me was a medication called Suboxone. And I credit Suboxone with giving my body this physiological sense of safety, but also non-craving, right? So when I
Okay.
didn't have to crave 24/7 heroin or opioids, I take this medicine and my body's now just boom, this is baseline.
Mm,
Every door opened up. This allowed me to go back to school. I'm it is wild that I'm even having this conversation with you here in disability in North
yeah.
Carolina because I should be dead. But just last year, I finished my doctorate of social work at the University of Tennessee. Thank you. And you know, I really do credit this medication that
Mm,
saved my life. On my journey, I'm a social worker, licensed clinical social worker, but I am fascinated with why some people are able to heal and find a new sense of purpose and
mm,
connect, create community and safety, and why other people cannot. I don't have the golden answer yet, but
okay.
there's definitely some trends towards um, this idea that every person, any person watching this, we all have this amazing thing called our nervous system, and its only job is to keep us alive. That's it. But when we go through these trauma states, same as combat, this rewires our brain, our body, our DNA, and our souls. And so someone once told me, like, oh my gosh, you carry just some awful memories. And, you know, I was thinking like trauma and PTSD is not bad memories, right?
Right.
Trauma and PTSD is a biological injury. It is
Mm,
not that I have bad memories. It is that my essence and everything is now changed. And this is true for people who go through prolonged trauma experiences and profound trauma experiences. You and I are forever different, and our brains and psyche literally morphed, and our brain went into a survival state. Our amygdala in our brain, this little fire
yeah.
detector, that thing grew huge, and our hippocampus, responsible for emotions and memory and meaning making, that shifted. Our cortisol regulation, all these really important like neurobiological factors truly changed us. Trauma did that. And so it's not us having bad memories. It is us having a biological injury. And so you were sharing you did the prolonged exposure, EMDR, CBT. I think you and I have the checklist, right? You've gone through it.
We did it.
We did it one time, two times, three times. And like,
Right.
am I there? But it's fascinating because you and I are here, and we'll never arrive. You will never arrive at a place where that trauma didn't happen. We'll never arrive where it's not still a part of us and in our bones.
Yeah.
But for me, I am able to, and have been through therapy and community, been able to turn down the volume.
Hmm.
I can turn down my reactivity where, 10 years ago, if a motorcycle backfired, instantly my nervous system, brain, everything would respond and say, cool, Kevin, listen, we got one job and it's to keep you alive. So we're going to shut
Right.
this down. But now I can have that happen. It may not even trigger a response, or if it does, within 3 seconds, I can note it, name it, breathe
Mm,
through my body, and find a grounding center. And so that's it is not ever that I'm going to be healed, but you and I are healing.
right. I like that. I like that a lot. There's not an endpoint, right? What are your thoughts about PTSD, and is it unique to military people? Do you think is it different? From your perspective, what makes a, veteran PTSD different from other forms of trauma, and how to cope as you're in it?
I I do think there are unique elements for veterans and PTSD and trauma. One is this idea that when you are in the service and then in combat, these are both environments where your nervous system is going to be on heightened response. It just
Mm,
will. We serve a lot of veterans in our program that never deployed, but have severe trauma. This is just through their training, through the hierarchy of the military, through military sexual trauma,
mm,
through any number of things. But I think it's one thing we see a lot of is this moral injury and moral dissonance, right? Where individuals have to behave in a manner that may be against their ethical code. For me,
yeah,
as an 18-year-old, it was against my moral code to kill another human being. And yet here I am, and that's my only job in the Marine Corps is to
right,
kill another human being. I had no other skills except violence and a weapon. When you're in a combat zone, your nervous system doesn't get to turn off. You
no,
don't get to take a break and say, all right, well, it's a 9 to 5, let's go home and we'll do that tomorrow. So I think that's kind of unique, you know. There are other settings, obviously, where that is true, where your nervous system is always on. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. You've gone through all these modalities. I'm sure you've heard of it in one of the classes, but the author, he says that all human suffering beyond that of an organic nature comes back to trauma. And he defines trauma as an inability to self-regulate and an inability to make meaningful relationships with other humans.
Mm,
Because that right there is the
yeah.
core of human suffering, which is interesting. I see that as a very common response to veterans who are in combat, come home and trying to navigate, right? So now I'm isolating. I'm don't know how to regulate this body that's always shaking and feels on fire.
Right.
Um, but yeah, that was, I think, what's unique. And then you asked kind of what helped me the most.
Yeah. So like what did you find that in that early stage of PTSD that kind of got you to get up and to cope, to first take those steps?
Yeah, I had reached a place where my best efforts were not working. So I needed someone else to tell me how to live, kind of like the Marines
Yeah.
did.
Okay.
But I needed that just as a human. How do I wake up with this feeling, this shame, this just
Mm,
heartbreak that I had to kill another human, that I had witnessed the death of my best friend and 26 other Marines that I'm with. And yet here I am, I'm living, I'm forever changed and just move forward. And, you know, I reached a place where I couldn't. And so I turned to um, people and communities that could really guide me on, all right, here's what you need. And yes, CBT and EMDR were part of it, but I
yeah.
needed, that's 1 hour of my day.
Right.
So I found community in music and playing music, and I found community in 12 step, right? And
Mm.
here's some principles to live by. And that was really helpful in the beginning for me.
All right. Well, I'm going to throw the question back at you now that you asked me. What does resiliency look like to you, and what does recovery look like to you?
I love your answers. So it would probably be cheating to say what you said. Well, I'll say that recovery, echoing what you already talked on, recovery is not a linear journey. Everyone's recovery looks different.
Mm,
So what worked for me is not prescriptive. I don't venture to say I know the solution, but yeah, I think recovery is just that courage to say I'm going to try today. And we may not succeed. It may not look like whatever construct we've built up as what I need to be, how I need to be living. But by simply saying, I'm going to try today, try to live, try to text someone, as you were saying, I think that's beautiful. I loved the way you explained resilience too. These are, in the clinical sense, we often talk about resilience as, building tools of resilience, right? And coping
right.
skills and having a whole toolbox. And no matter what hits us, we'll just pull out the right tool. But yeah, I think it's so much more than that. And just stepping back, I think it is um, community. It's the opposite of isolation. It is the
Mm.
opposite of going it alone. It's the opposite of all that, like you were saying. So, um, yeah, I'm gonna say you nailed it on that answer and echo it.
I just want to say, I think conversations like this is what we need. And we need to be reminded that this stuff's hard, but I think this is part of the healing process about having these conversations. So thank you so much for feeling willing to have this conversation with me.
Likewise, Kelly, thank you so much. I really, really have enjoyed our conversation.
Same here. Thank you.
So now it's time for our question and answers. Thank you for that, Kevin and Kelly. I appreciate your time today and giving us your remarks. That was really heartfelt, for sure. So I have a question. What would you advise others to consider if they suspect that PTSD may be affecting their life?
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. So if anyone thinks PTSD may be affecting their life, I like to think there's no wrong way to approach it. It could be as simple as I tell all the veterans going to the VA. They have walk-in clinics. You can just walk into the VA. They have a specific department for mental health and simply say, hey, I'd love to talk to someone today. And the staff may say, all right, what's the concern? I'm just not feeling good. Or I don't know, I'm having difficulty in my relationships, difficulty regulating my emotions. So the walk-in clinic at the VA is a great place. There's the National Crisis Line. We have in North Carolina 411. You can dial that and get connected to any number of resources. But yeah, I think I started just by opening up to someone I trusted, a family member, and saying, this doesn't feel right.
How about you, Kelly? Any words of wisdom there? Thank you for that, Kevin.
No, Kevin nailed it. You know, it is a little bit intimidating to sometimes make a phone call to somebody you don't know. So I would just second that, just talking to a trusted person, just to that that's willing and able to listen to what's going on with you at the moment.
Yes, that brings up this next question, really. Those folks, how do you advise those folks living with people experiencing PTSD? How do they navigate those effects of PTSD and how can they be supportive of the recovery process?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question. My husband was able to have some really direct conversations with me. He's from New York, and so he doesn't mince words. Um, so I mean, he was direct. He just said, "I think you need some help, and I think it's outside of what I can help you with." And so he was my first contact of saying, "I think you need to go um, see the VA and have a conversation." So that could be helpful. Directness could be helpful. And I think sometimes just having a listening ear in the beginning stages when you don't know what's really going on um, is helpful. Lots of patience. Lots of patience is helpful. Um, yeah, so that would be my 2 cents. Kevin?
Yeah, I agree, Kelly. I think the patience is critical. Um, Approaching with non-judgment, because we know that the trauma response is a biological response, right? So it isn't a moral shortcoming or their weakness, right? And so if your loved one is experiencing these symptoms, really framing that as like, this is a completely natural response to an abnormal experience.
Thank you for that. Well, what about our culture, though? How can we be more responsive, the culture itself, and less judgmental about mental health, or to foster a more accepting and understanding approach to mental health conditions? I'm sure that's something you guys experience out in the world here today.
Yeah, that's true. And I have to say, forums like this, one of
Mhm.
the biggest ways that we can dismantle stigma is through education and understanding. Because if I don't understand something, then yeah, it's easy to stigmatize this veteran who's, responding to external stimuli in a strange way, in a way that may not appear normal to me. But if I'm able to understand, and culture honors this, it's a neurobiological change that happens. I think education and outreach is huge. So I tip my hat to, this event right here. And then the conversations that everyone has in their friend group and in their family, talking about, hey, I went to this presentation today, and two veterans were talking about their experience, and here's some insights that I learned. I think that's how we change culture. What do you think, Kelly?
I absolutely agree. I mean, one thing that shocked me was my faith community ended up having, how to navigate PTSD course, which surprised me. So I think just that awareness and educational piece, told me that it was safe to have those discussions. So that's really helpful. Like you said, just this forum right here, it's telling us it's okay to have this conversation and learn from each other.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Anyone else have any other questions they'd like to ask these folks today? I do want to bring up, just to make sure you guys remember, that Kelly's book, Weekend War on the Two Fronts, that is out there on Amazon. It is an amazing book. I have read that. Thank you for that, Kelly. And then Kevin's music is out there on YouTube. I've seen it, and Spotify. Please make sure that you go out there and download some of the music. It is very amazing. I had it going yesterday during my work session, and it's really good. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate that. Any other questions? So Beth, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Elizabeth. And Kevin and Kelly, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I know that this is a message that resonates with so many. And I know that you in sharing your stories made a difference today. So again, thank you. Thank you for your willingness to join us and to share your experiences. I'd also love to thank everyone again for joining today's event. We are again very, very grateful for our sponsors, Novant Health, Atrium Health, and MetLife. And we're going to end our program today with a short breathing exercise provided by Novant Health. But before we do that, I do want to remind you all of our upcoming events happening at Disability in North Carolina. We have an ADA event that is sponsored by Biogen, and that's happening on July 24th. That has historically been a virtual event, but this year, thanks to again, Biogen's sponsorship, we're going to have an in-person event, and that'll be in the Raleigh Research Triangle Park area. That event will be the Thriving with the ADA, a future without limits. So please be on the lookout for registration to open. This event's going to showcase artists. Oh, I don't know, maybe we can get Kevin Rumley and Kelly to come and promote their books and their albums. We also have other storytellers with lived experiences that kind of share their journey as it relates to the ADA. So please mark your calendars for July 24th. We also will host our 2025 Fall Conference on October 9th. That is an in-person event as well. We will host that on the beautiful campus of Train Technologies in Davidson, North Carolina. Again, that's October 9th, so watch for registration to open for that event as well. You do want to register early because we did have a sellout crowd last year. So there's limited space available. So please note that as well. And now we want to also remind you of our business to business meetings. We launched those late last year, and they have really served us well It's an opportunity for our member companies to come together and listen and learn about various topics on a monthly basis. Our next one is scheduled for May 14th, which is just next week, next Wednesday, from 3:30 to 4:30. More information can be found under the events tab on our website at Disability in North Carolina. Also, again, after our breathing exercise, I want to invite you to feel free to stay on and listen to more of Kevin Rumley's album, which will be playing in the background following the breathing exercise. So sit back and relax and enjoy this exercise as we close.
In our high stakes, high pressure, rushed environment as physicians and APPs, it's so easy to get disconnected from ourselves, from our bodies, disconnected from the patients in front of us, and disconnected from our colleagues and our loved ones. This brief guided meditation is designed to help you pause just for a moment, to reset yourself and to reconnect with those things that matter the most. And you don't have to change your position. You can be standing or sitting, wherever you are. Take a nice deep breath in, filling up the belly. And exhaling completely and slowly, letting go of any stress in your shoulders, your belly, your hands. And if you like, you can allow your eyes to gently close or just gaze in front of you. Give yourself permission to be fully here and now, in this moment. Letting go of any worries for the future, of any thoughts of the past. And just allow any thoughts or feelings that are arising to be there. Not judging them, not pushing them away, simply allowing them to be there as you anchor yourself in this present moment. Feel your feet on the ground. If you're sitting, feel your thighs against the chair. Notice your breath entering in and out. In these last few moments of stillness and quiet, can you remember why you went into this practice in the first place? Why you were called to practice medicine, to serve others? Can you reconnect with that deeper sense of purpose? And finally, tune in to any image of yourself as you go forward through your day. Maybe it's the next patient you interact with, maybe it's your colleague, or a meeting you're about to enter. See the interaction in your mind's eye, how you'd like it to go, how you'd like to show up, perhaps with more calm, perhaps with more clarity, perhaps with a deeper sense of connection with what matters most. And as you inhale and exhale, letting go of this practice, knowing that you can tap into this state of being anytime you want throughout the day. We'll see you next time.